A very good afternoon. Welcome to the second webinar of our digital transformation series, a practical e-commerce approach. I am Shivani Sinoran, your moderator for the afternoon. It's 6 p.m. Trinidad time. We have a lot of regional viewers. It's 4 p.m. in Belize and 5 p.m. in Jamaica. Welcome to everyone. A very, very interesting conversation. We have a very versatile panel who will bring loads of information, lots of discussion to whet your appetite, I should say, for e-commerce as we continue. So we're going to start the conversation, of course, by asking ourselves, we all here, what is e-commerce? What is e-commerce? So many of us will be hearing about e-commerce and keep thinking about e-commerce, online payments over the internet, which is so true. It's all about online payments over the internet. How secure it is, these are conversations our panel will bring forward. How secure e-commerce are? What are the different platforms that we're going to bring forward, different conversations? We're going to hear the panelists bringing this type of information. And definitely, we'll speak a lot about the different types of business models and how e-commerce will impact it. Different business models that we'll converse about. A business-to-business model, one of my favorite models, business to business. And we'll definitely hear our panelists speak and bring forward interesting conversations about e-commerce and the impact of e-commerce on a business-to-business model, the traditional models, and how e-commerce really is going to change the way that we do business. We'll also bring forward business to consumer and how e-commerce will also affect that. Now, why is e-commerce so very, very popular? E-commerce is very popular now more than ever. Why? Why it's so very popular? And the conversation will really flow in this direction. How we can probably get more into e-commerce and how we can, develop our businesses. And is it that we need to get into e-commerce? So let me introduce for the afternoon, for the next hour or so, a very interesting panel. We have Mr. Nishan Singh. Nishan Singh is a project management consultant with over 8 years of experience in implementing digital transformation and e-government projects in the public sector. He also consults privately to assist micro and small businesses to develop and implement their e-commerce strategy and platforms. Welcome, Nishan. We also have on the panel Mrs. Bernadette Rattan, who is a CIT manager with over 20 years of experience in different aspects of information technology in the private sector. She has over 10 years experience in implementing projects, with 5 years being specifically related to telecom. Mrs. Rattan also has a strong skill as a business analyst, which is such a very important role in the digital transformation. And we'll speak so much about that. Mrs. Rattan, as a business analyst, she has lots of experience working in the manufacturing sector within the Caribbean and Central America. And joining us on this panel, we have Mr. Shivanan Prasad, who is the head of digital and IT for the media sector of Ansa Makal and possesses almost a decade of experience in a variety of fields. These include, but of course, it's not limited to electrical and computer engineering, telecom, ICT technologies, project management, and strategic operations. This experience brings with it a rich experience, a rich understanding of the development and progression of technology over the years. And of course, Shivanan will contribute a lot to the transformational impact on the corporate world, in the corporate world. All of our presenters here this afternoon will contribute to the conversation of e-commerce, a practical e-commerce, a practical view, I should say, of e-commerce. And one thing that, you know, the entire panel we have in common is that we are looking at the e-commerce, we are looking at technical projects from a project management point, because project management is so relevant in all these different areas. So all of the entire panel will be contributing to the digital transformation and contributing, showing from a PM's point how e-commerce can really succeed and what we need to do. So join me in welcoming Nishan, Bernadette, and Shivanan. Go through for the next hour, and we have a very, very interesting conversation on e-commerce. So thank you, everyone. And thank you to the panel for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to the panel for joining us this afternoon. So a key point here, you know, one of the key points in e-commerce that everybody keeps talking about, e-commerce. How would we say that e-commerce impacts these traditional business models? You know, the traditional business model of business to consumer. How will e-commerce, or how is e-commerce already impacting the traditional way that we do business? How is it? So Nishan, I know you will take the floor with that one. Hi, Nishan Singh, everybody. Welcome,
Thank you, Nishan, very much for that introduction. In terms of the impact on the business models or traditional business models, we can look at the traditional brick and mortar sort of setup, which basically is a term for a physical store location, where if you're a seller, you have to set up a physical store. As a customer, you have to come to this store. You may have to shop around different stores in person in order to make a purchase. Also, we can use catalog selling, where persons mail you catalogs where you would look through it, complete an order, then mail it back out. Or even door-to-door salespeople come to your door with their products to show you again in person. Now, with the introduction of e-commerce and the use of the internet and high-speed communications, all of these sellers now can enjoy what we call the online storefront. So customers can go onto our website, their e-commerce platform, and view their products online. This has the benefit to the sellers in that they have lower capital investments usually required to start off their platform, as well as they don't need to invest in physical space. So this has an impact on reducing the overheads for sellers, as well as the need to hire less people because there may be less need for physical in-store engagements. From the consumer's point of view, because of internet search engines like Google, customers can easily browse the internet to find many suppliers for their goods or particular service that they're looking for. And this has forced these suppliers in themselves to become more innovative in their product and service offerings to customers. And a good example, Shivani, as you were talking about the business to business, business to consumer, we are all very much aware of business to consumer marketplaces. Most notable is the Amazon for online shopping, Amazon. You have business to business marketplace like Alibaba, but it's also allowed the expansion or the development of consumer to consumer marketplaces now through sites such as eBay, Craigslist, or even Facebook. And I would probably even go one step further to mention government to consumer sort of services, where members of the public can go online and access and pay for certain government services. Now, in a local context, we have a lot of marketplaces. We have like Barter Hut, we have ClickSmart, Trini Trolley, we have Food Drop. These are marketplaces that developed recently and out of the impact of COVID, and allows locals to go online and browse and shop and pay for goods and services online. Many actors, consumers, businesses, governments do business with their customers.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Nishan. Right? Thank you very much. You know, many takeaways from your conversation. You spoke a lot about business to consumer and how, you know, e-commerce is really changing the brick and mortar. As all of us are seeing right now, as you said, you don't have to go to a shop anymore. You can just go log on and purchase whatever you want. So indeed, it is changing. Indeed, it is changing. But I wanted to chat a little more about the business to business model and how e-commerce is it's going to change. It's going to change how we do business to business and how we could really improve with e-commerce in a business to business model. So, you know, my favorite, you know, I'm drinking coffee, and let's say I have a coffee brand now and I want to sell coffee. How is e-commerce going to assist in a business to business form? Bernadette, what do you think? Business to business model. So let's bring Bernadette into the conversation. A business to B2B model and how e-commerce can impact now on B2B. Bernadette, what do you think?
Hi, Shivani. Thank you very much for that introduction earlier. So as you're talking about B2B and e-commerce and of course, drinking coffee, usually as Nishan had previously mentioned, when we speak about e-commerce, we think about the Amazons of the world or the AliExpress or even eBay. But business to business is very special. With the business to business, if I'm a producer of coffee and I want to sell my coffee, where am I going to sell it to? So as you mentioned, I'm going to take it from a practical point with my sort of business analyst experience. If, let's say I have a coffee shop, I'm going to model it after me. It's, let's say, Burns Beans. And I'm going to sell Burns Beans to, where am I going to sell it to? Coffee shops, supermarkets, maybe even quick shops. When I go, these are businesses. It's not the person who's actually drinking the cup of the coffee, but these are the people who are going to make my coffee and sell it to the people who are going to drink coffee. So it's a business to business model. What happens is I'm selling my coffee, and let's say the supermarket is buying my coffee. So from a process perspective, the supermarket creates a purchase order. They put that purchase order with a quantity, they print it, they send it to me, Burns Beans. I then look at my inventory. I create a sales invoice or a sales order first. I say, okay, I have 100 bags. I'm going to give you 50. I create the invoice and I deliver my coffee as well as the invoice. Then somebody enters it into a system. They match my purchase order with my sales order. Then I'm ready to be paid. All of those processes would be a typical process, assuming you had an application. But when we talk about e-commerce and business to business, what we're talking about is integrating those steps. Why do we still need paper? Have you gone to purchase recently? I purchased eggs and I've gotten an e-invoice, a WhatsApp invoice. It's the same thing. Instead of now me, the supermarket, printing a purchase order, sending it to Burns Beans, and me printing a sales order, sending it off, have somebody deliver it. What we can do is integrate the systems. The supermarket, when they generate a purchase order, it can automatically create a sales order in my application. I don't have to wait on it. From the time they say, okay, order, it goes through a process, an interim solution, and then it creates it in my application. Hey, look, I have an order. I fulfill the order. When I say, okay, I'm going to deliver, upon delivery, it says, okay, delivered. It creates now that receipt in the supermarket's application, and I now have I'm expecting a payment. We'll talk about a payment a bit after, but that's in a local context. Let's look at it internationally. When last has anybody looked at the DHL page? Now you're thinking DHL and e-commerce. What does DHL have to do with e-commerce? But if you really look at the DHL site, there's a whole tab on e-commerce. And just to expand a little bit on what they've done is they have taken away your whole, or made your life easier, taken away your whole delivery worries. If I were a small business, DHL offers portals where it sets up everything there. When you look at the portal, there's a small little 4x4 configuration said, okay, a portal is good for you because you know what, you don't have too much IT experience or IT expertise in-house, and you have small volumes that you want to deliver. This is what we can do. We set you up with a portal, you log in, you put all your deliveries, you can track it online, and you can even get metrics at some point in time as to your deliveries, if they were on time, if the customer was satisfied, they even give you feedback. The second area is if you have a larger quantity of, or a larger volume of deliveries using the DHL concept, there's something called EDIs. EDIs are electronic data interfaces. What that means is in the same context of the coffee model, I can choose, let's say the supermarket is a little bit resistant to, okay, I don't want you to access my interface because I'm a little bit hesitant. Maybe there's some sort of issue with it. But me as Burns Beans, I say, no, sure, no problem. Create your sales order one time. So what the electronic data interface does is it allows me to create my sales part automatically, not necessarily purchase order from the supermarket, but my sales order. Same thing on DHL. They're allowing customers to integrate to their platform to track their packages wherever, but it limits it not necessarily in a full application, but certain aspects of it. And then you have APIs, which are application programming interfaces. And that's when we would integrate fully with other third parties. Now, as you know, the world, there's some commonalities in the world. Larger companies have specific applications and it's used, your SAPs, your Oracles, etc. in the marketplace. So they've gone a step further where they're direct interfaces that they have, third-party applications, and they can even integrate to, as Nishan was talking about, some of the other places like a Shopify or a WooCommerce. So B2B, the applications of B2B is tremendous, and it's growing every day.
So Bernadette, thanks for that. You mentioned a lot, your conversation is about business to business, and that is something that we need to do a lot more of, business to business, different models, and how e-commerce, your conversation really is making me take away how e-commerce can tremendously improve a B2B model, business to business model, and how you could probably capitalize and your processes can be so improved. You know, you could improve your processes with e-commerce in looking at a B2B, business to business model. And I'm very happy that you continue with my coffee conversation with business to business model, right, Bernadette, right? So thanks, Nishan and Bernadette, you know, in your conversations about the different models, business to consumer, and then we have business to business, and how e-commerce is changing and is improving these two different traditional ways of business that we have, models, I should say. But Shivanan, so let me bring Shivanan into the conversation here. Shivanan Prasad, right? So Shivanan, you know, what would you say are some of the things that you must consider? Because we started this whole conversation by speaking about e-commerce and bringing things into the conversation like business to business models and business to consumers. You know, this is how we do business. A business will go and sell to a consumer, and then a business can sell to another business. But is somebody just starting out and wants to know about e-commerce, they're just hearing about e-commerce and they need to do it, that's what they're hearing. What are some of the factors that a person must consider? What do you think, Shivanan? So welcome, Shivanan.
Thank you for the invitation, Shivani. and a pleasant good evening to everyone here. Before I actually, expand on the different factors that are required before you go into e-commerce, I really want to expand on one of the points that Bernadette made earlier, right? She used DHL as an example, and the way DHL has evolved while leveraging technology has really been amazing, right? Something that I've observed probably across the last year. DHL has the ability to send a form to a customer. They can fill out that form, and once that simple form is submitted, DHL takes care of the customer's entire supply chain from beginning to end. Well, the logistics aspect, of course, right? They would go to the supplier's address, they would pick up the packages, and then bring it straight to the customer. The customer doesn't even have to worry about shipping from that retail outlet or that supplier's outlet to DHL before getting it to themselves. So that brings convenience into this space, right? And e-commerce is largely about convenience, right? E-commerce isn't just a system that gives you a mechanism to sell products online. What you're doing with e-commerce is you're largely selling convenience to your customers, right? So the factors to consider here when you're moving into this e-commerce space would largely surround the area of convenience, right? In order to be convenient for your customers, you need to understand who your target market is. Who are your customers? What are they interested in? What are their spending habits? What are they about? If you are going online to launch an e-commerce platform, you need to consider things like how are they going to pay for your products and services? Whether it's credit card based, whether you're going to integrate with some type of offline payment system, such as WePay, SurePay, all of these different vendors that we have locally. And I think Nishan would expand on that a little bit later on. But essentially, there's a wide variety of options for you when it comes to the payment space. You need to consider that payment aspect. You need to consider your customers, their behaviors, their patterns. Another thing you need to consider is the customer service aspect. A lot of companies have the misconception that when you launch an e-commerce platform, it's an automated system that does everything for you. You're going to just put up a website and you're going to just magically have sales. The system will work for itself and bring in revenue. But that's not how it works, right? What tends to happen is that customers who are familiar with the traditional brick and mortar model, they would come into this new space, this new e-commerce space. And at times they may be very unfamiliar with using the technologies that you've implemented. When this happens, you need to leverage on some customer service mechanisms. So it's something you need to pay special attention to when you are doing your budgeting for your e-commerce platforms as well, because a lot of companies overlook this aspect. Another thing you may need to consider with your e-commerce platform is the selection of the platform itself. Different platforms serve different needs. In a business to consumer model, you may have a platform that functions the way Amazon does, the way eBay does. Despite eBay being a customer to customer model, eBay can also facilitate a business to consumer model. So you need to look at your platform and ensure that your platform is well suited to the business that you're trying to launch, to the products that you're trying to sell, and to the way you go about deploying those services. Now, e-commerce isn't just about selling products, right? You can also be selling services via your e-commerce platform. You can do things such as digital services. You can sell software. So you need to consider exactly how you want to go about this. Things like digital services and software, you would want to pay more attention to the security side, because you don't want, somebody hacking your website and then taking all of your products for free. It puts you at a major loss. In the retail space, you may want to consider security from the payment side. And at this point in time, a lot of companies now offer package solutions whereby your payment gateway, your payment platform is already integrated into the entire package that they're selling you. So you don't really have to worry about security from the payment side as much anymore. But still, you need to ensure that you consider the security of your entire platform. Another major factor to be considered. Sorry. You were saying
Yeah, no,
something, Siobhan?
I love that point that you made. I love that point that you made there, Shivanan, that you have to speak up, you have to think about the security, the security of the platform, and to ensure the main systems that you have. And we'll
Yes.
converse so much later down the road about that. But that's a key point for me. Huh? And many persons would look at that. They would look at, is e-commerce safe? I'm about payment. So if we have to set up an e-commerce platform, we have to ensure that we are using a platform that is safe. And as you mentioned, Shivanan, things have changed, and you have a lot of better security. Yes,
Yes, that is
there's
correct.
a lot of improvements.
Yeah. Other factors that you may need to consider heavily is the actual maintenance of your website. A lot of people think that, technology is something you deploy and you leave it there and it will just last. But you need to go in and routinely do checks on the system, check the logs, ensure that, nothing is going amiss while you're asleep at night. There's no intrusion attempts. Nobody's trying to hack into your website. You need to ensure that everything functions as it should. And that's where maintenance and day-to-day operations play a big part into e-commerce. And it's something that people tend to overlook as well when they're budgeting for e-commerce, because they don't realize that you're going to need staff or at least some third-party service to come in and maintain your site and maintain your operations.
But
Another
Shivanan,
major,
that is another key point, Shivanan. We want to. I hear a lot of people, they keep saying, I want to get into this online business and set up an e-commerce platform and an e-commerce site. But you mentioned something. It's much more than just setting up an e-commerce site, because
correct?
I could come now and say, I want an e-commerce site. Let me pay Nishan, the web developer, and he's going to design a website for me. And then what? Then I may realize, but wait, I didn't cater for the amount that I have to do in terms of budgeting. I have to have somebody to maintain it. I have to have somebody to upload it. So you mentioned staff. So
Yes.
e-commerce, and many people, Shivanan, you're really on a key point there. Many persons, that's how they think. Okay, great. I'm going to hire a web designer, a web developer, and they're going to develop a website for me. And then
Yeah.
what? Then you
And
have the website, and then you hear people, then we say, oh gosh, but Nishan, he didn't develop the website good, because look, it's not making any money. It's not making any money. But it's because, as you said, Shivanan, we did not look at so many other factors. We did not look at so many other factors.
Yeah,
Yes, Shivanan.
staff plays a crucial role here, because then your staff comes into the mix when you need to do things like logistics and supply chain management for your platform. Let's say you have an online store, and I like to use Amazon as an example, because Amazon is the largest player in this space, and they've done the world of things. They've tried services, they've failed at certain things. So they serve as a good mentor for anyone who's coming into the e-commerce space, right? You can look at their successes and failures and build off of that. When you look at Amazon as an example, right? If you have to consider, how does Amazon, populate that website? How do you put those items up for sale? Somebody needs to go in there and say, well, okay, I have 500 cell phone chargers, or I have 100 tablets for sale. And while the system may do an automatic count after each one is purchased and let you know, okay, you're almost running low on stock, that sort of thing. If you're bringing a new device type, or you're adding new products to your portfolio, to your online platform, you're going to need humans to actually do this. Humans need to manage the inventory in the background and input all of this data into your system. So these are things that need to be considered as well when you are putting out an e-commerce platform. It's not just some automated system that does everything for you. Beyond that,
Very true, Shiva. Very true, Shiva. Yeah.
beyond that, there's one thing that really defines the success. Well, two things in particular that strongly defines the success of an e-commerce platform. One is the overall user experience, which is tied closely into the design of your platform, right? How it looks, how it feels, whether it's slow, whether it's responsive, that sort of thing, whether it's visually appealing to customers, whether it entices them to come and make a purchase. And then the second part ties in there with the way you go about advertising your e-commerce platform. You need to pay careful attention to that marketing strategy for your platform, else it will not succeed. If no one knows that you have a platform there, they will never come to it to purchase from you. And that is something people overlook as well. You may be marketing to the wrong audiences. So all of these things should be considered. And I may expand on the marketing side of things a little bit later on, but I don't want to take up too much time from the discussion.
But Shivanan, no. Very, very good conversation. Bernadette, what you're coming in with?
I just wanted to compliment something that I know he doesn't want to go too much into the marketing, but one of the things we also have to realize in terms of when he says our target audience is not only the adults or the people with the purchasing power these days. You realize now we have children, we have a whole range of ages, people who could not purchase things before now that you're advertising to, so that when you have an electronic device, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, a phone, a tablet, once some individual from age 2 or 3 up has access, it's advertising. Where whatever site they go on, whatever they see, you are advertising.
Yeah. So definitely, Bernadette, Shivanan, as you said, marketing, we have to we will speak about crafting a marketing strategy. How do we craft a marketing strategy? I know that's one of your favorite topics, Shivanan. But our conversation is going so interesting thus far. And I know the audience is also with us. And some of the takeaways, and just to ensure that everybody is really with us, we have to know the different types of models, which is a business-to-business model, a business-to-consumer model, and how e-commerce, it impacts these areas, it impacts these models, and how it's changing. E-commerce is really changing how we do business, right? And that is something that we always have to remember, how we are going to, the whole world is changing, how e-commerce is changing, how we do business. So Shivanan, you spoke a lot about we could develop a website, but we have to ensure that we have staff. It's much more than just having a website with 5 products or 5 services or 100 products or 100 digital services that we spoke about, music and all these different things. We have to market it. We have to ensure that the design is something that is catchy, that people will want. We have to speak about security of the site. Security of the e-commerce site is very important. So e-commerce is not a one-off thing. You can't just build a platform and think, wow, good, and then it's working. Many more things to do. And this is just triggering a point in my head right now with e-commerce. And Bernadette and Nishan, you definitely will understand what I'm saying here, because we joke about it amongst ourselves. Culture eats strategy for lunch. Culture eats strategy for lunch. So we may have a nice e-commerce site, a wonderful e-commerce site, and you have good strategy and all of that. But what about the soft, there are so many soft issues concerning e-commerce. In terms of persons may not want to purchase the culture, so many different soft issues. Think about that. Soft issues concerning this e-commerce. So Shivanan spoke a lot about marketing, and he's going to expand and elaborate a lot more on the marketing elements. But we also want to ensure culture and e-commerce now and the soft issues around it. We may have a wonderful website, but then persons, they're not on board, we're not reaching the client. They are afraid of it. Cultural issues again, cultural, right? Soft issues, as we say, soft issues. And that's a key point. Many times with technology, we have to always remember that. Yeah? Nishan, what do you think? Yeah? Nishan, yes? Yeah,
I think
so you just
Nishan
went.
dropped for a second. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. The limitations itself technology brings when you're doing things online as well. Good example.
Well, we know we are on e-commerce, we are on a technology environment webinar, so we know how it goes, right? So you went in and you went out. So you're showing the importance and how important it is to get back on.
Exactly.
So what we were saying, Nishan, Shivanan spoke a lot about e-commerce and the importance of e-commerce and the website development and security issues. But it's so much more than just a technology point. What about culture? What about the soft issues concerning e-commerce? The soft issues concerning e-commerce.
Agreed, agreed. And you can look at it from different perspectives as well. For example, Shivana has spoken about the need for the training of employees. You need to make sure that your employees are able to operate and use your e-commerce platform. So there may be some level of training required for them in terms of how they interact with customers in a digital environment. You're no longer a face-to-face sort of approach. You might have someone behind a chat or behind an email or behind a phone. So these persons need to be trained as well in terms of how to engage the customer effectively, as well as engage in the operations side of it. Another thing to look at is your customers. How are you going to get them to participate in your online store? Are they computer literate? Do they know how to place orders? Are they comfortable placing orders, making payments online? So what are you as a e-commerce, as a seller doing business online, how are you going to reassure these customers that, listen, your data is safe, it's easy to use, and give them the assurance that when they pay, they are going to get their goods delivered on time. So those are some of the software.
What you said there, Nishan.
Yeah.
I like what you said there in terms of, if we look at it, that we have an e-commerce site, and how are we engaging our customers? How are we making our customers feel comfortable, that they come and purchase? And how can we engage them? Now, this is a conversation I always love to have with people, in the sense that we have websites, we have all of this e-commerce, and now we're going into the digital platforms, whether it is e-commerce or not. Is it that we are losing the communication with our customers if we go into an online environment? Because and this is the conversation in terms of soft issues, that many persons believe, oh gosh, no, I can't speak to a computer, I have to speak to somebody in front of them, otherwise things not going good. And all of us have those examples. We have those examples over and over, where persons want to speak to somebody, they prefer a phone call. So these are the soft issues. But you mentioned something there in terms of customer support. How can we support the customers? How can we ensure that our customers understand that we are there to engage them, that we are there? There are so many different ways to do it. The different customer support, the different types of customer support that we could have. I know Shivanand's going to speak a lot about that here, the different types of customer support.
Yeah, I guess I can chime in at this point. So essentially, when it comes to customer support, you need to be available to support your customers whenever they have issues, whether it's that they have issues with your platform, whether it's that they have issues with your product. You need to be there for them, because as I said earlier, an e-commerce platform is about convenience. If a user has a terrible experience, you are going to lose them as a customer. That is a well-known fact, right? It's proven the world over. So you need to be careful about that. The different customer support options that are available in the e-commerce space, it's a bit more varied than in the traditional model, right? With technology, you can now have things such as chatbots. You can have automated customer interaction tools, automated auto attendants. So when they call via the phone, instead of someone listening to all of the issues the customer has outright and then figuring out which department to direct them to, you can have an automated attendant whereby the customers select the options from a tree. Now that isn't such a fairly new solution. Where it gets really creative is when you leverage that with the ability to chat through a website. So I can visit a website, I'm looking for a particular product, but I really don't want to search for it through the entire website. There's a little chat bot in the corner of the website. I can type in my question. The chatbot would respond and give me some options related to keywords in my questions. So let's say I'm looking for an article of clothing. Let's say I want to buy a suit. So the chatbot would see me asking a question about a suit, and it would give me some options. Would you like to go to the clothing department? Would you like to check at the men's department? Because these sites now will also be pulling your data as a customer to understand you better. So it would leverage all of this information and then direct you to the person that you need to speak to, saving you all of the headache whereby, you'd be bounced around between departments in the traditional space. You walk into a store, you're looking for an item, you ask one of the persons working there, one of the attendants, where can I find this? The person isn't sure because they're not working in that department. So they refer you to someone else. That person then refers you to a third person and a fourth person, and you get bounced around a lot, and that gives you a negative experience in the traditional space. In the automated space, it narrows down your question and directs you specifically to where you need to go. Another key point here is a lot of these websites, you can have a frequently asked questions section so that, customers can sort of help themselves when they get here before they require human intervention. What this does for you as a business is this reduces the amount of investment you need to make into human customer support. You no longer need a large support department with 15 staff or 20 staff. You can now get by on probably 3 or 4 staff members rotating throughout the week. And that gives you a lot more spending power on your platform, reinvestment into your business, that sort of thing. So these support options are there. They give you a good advantage when you're using e-commerce. Another thing that we need to leverage from the customer support side is social media, right? A lot of customers now are familiar and quite comfortable with using social media as a means of communicating. So let's say I'm looking for a restaurant and I need to find their phone number. I want to find out if they have a particular dish on the menu. In the past, you would probably go and look through the yellow pages or telephone directory. As technology evolved, you may have done a Google search on the restaurant with the hopes that their information is online. Nowadays, what people tend to do, they open Facebook, they open Instagram, they look to see if that restaurant has a page there. If it doesn't, what they tend to do is they most often change their mind about what they're feeling to eat. And at that point, you're already losing a customer. You want to reduce that and provide all of the avenues available for your customers to reach you, to be able to communicate with you, that sort of thing. If they're using social media and they're a bit introverted, they don't like to make phone calls, they can just send you a message via your social media platform. And as long as you have, your staff there to support, they can respond and the customer gets the information they need. It makes life easier for everyone. And ultimately, that's the main premise here. Convenience,
Shivanan, as you said. So, main points there, Shivanan, with e-commerce, persons now, would be seeing that e-commerce, you could have even better customer support with some of these automated tools that you spoke about. I know some of my colleagues, we're speaking so much about that, the FAQ, the frequently asked questions, and it will help you not to be bounced around from department to department, and all of the information is right there for you. I also like what you mentioned about the social media. So you are saying, Shivanan, if you don't see a restaurant online, you're not going to go to the restaurant. You're not going to go to that restaurant if you're not online.
It's unlikely. Human behavior has gotten to the point where instant gratification is a real thing, right? If you can't have something that you want now, yes. If you can't have what you want now, you'll change your mind about what you want. And that's usually the problem, or you'll look elsewhere.
And the reason for that, I have children who are 7 and 9, and you see it coming up from them, that instant gratification. If the internet goes slow or something drops, you see, what is going on here? It's the same thing on an e-commerce platform, right? What's happening? Why can't I get this? What is going on? But to show you that and how it ties back when you started, Shivani, with the culture part of things, is the fact that because of this instant gratification, what we see now is a culture more that is going towards self-service. I would go and find it myself, as Shivanan says. Let me go find the restaurant myself. I don't want to go and ask anybody. That social interaction is diminishing somewhat. And it is partly because of these platforms that we have, especially social media. I can find it myself. No, I don't need your help. I can go online, I can Google it, I can go on any social media platform, Instagram. The problem becomes when I can't find it. But because someone mentions that, hey, but this was here, I was here. No. What happens then? And our culture, as I said, is shifting. We're not quite there, but it's shifting more towards that. And gone are the days of people trying to get information from other people and interacting. It's not as before, but we still have that interaction, but in a different way. Rather than us like having this conversation, how many times have you gone out and see people now, and there are 4 people in a family and each one has a device, the adults on the phones and the children on some sort of tablet or even a phone. So it is changing and we have to adapt to that change.
Very true, Bernadette, very true. And how, the culture, and because things are changing so much, and both of your points, people now want to go and look for something. They will go and look for something themselves. So I might call up somebody on the phone and say, Nishan, what do you think about this? Or should I go and buy this or not? I may just go online. And then if it is not online, then I might just be, I might bother again. So, that points that we are going into the online business. This is what we need to really look at. We need to look at our e-commerce platforms. We need to look at how we are designing it and how we are communicating and engaging with our customers. What about the social media? And always understand that if people are looking for something, they're going to go on, they're going to look, as you said, on Facebook, on Instagram, they're going to look online to see what it is all about. And if it's not there, then they're not going to ask anybody. They're just not going to bother and probably look for something else online. Because culture is changing, people are changing, the world is changing. So very, very interesting points. Now, this whole conversation, we keep speaking about e-commerce platforms. And, Nishan, this is your specialty in website development, the different types of e-commerce platforms that we may have. What do you think about it? And I was conversing with somebody about it in terms of platforms. Do we have to purchase off-the-shelf platforms, or could we design our own platform? So I may have a business that I want to go online and get online. It's a major company that I want to put online. Do I now just say, okay, let me purchase an off-the-shelf package, or should I now go and design from scratch? Nisha, what would you do? What are some of the points in that? E-commerce platforms, local?
All right, Shivani. Well, in terms of even starting off, it really depends on the needs of the business. And coming back to some of the factors Shivanan would have mentioned before in choosing to go online and what platform to use. Some of the typical factors would be like, what is the cost? Who are your customers? What is your budget like? Who are you trying to engage? One option would be to develop your own in-house solution. And what Shivanan would have mentioned, where you have to really focus in on making sure that it is secure, customers trust it. You have to check the logs to make sure that it's not being hacked or tampered with. This approach gives you a lot of control and security because it's your solution and you can basically manage it and have complete oversight of it. But of course, it comes at a cost. And not many businesses, especially small businesses, can really justify investment in your own customized, fully developed e-commerce platform. You will leave this for big organizations such as multinational banks and insurance corporations, where the data is very, very sensitive. And you really want to have that level of control when you're offering your goods and services on your platform. For smaller businesses, on the other hand, where the risk is a bit lower, you might want to consider some sort of out-of-the-box solution. And there are many sites or platforms available online that small businesses in particular can go on and purchase And a lot of the support services in terms of maintaining, hosting, ensuring it's secure, integrating with the payment provider, etc. All of that is already taken care of, and it comes at a very low cost. So some of the popular online stores or e-commerce platforms includes what everybody may know: Shopify, BigCommerce, Magneto, WooCommerce, Squarespace, and these companies offer different tiers or levels of e-commerce solutions. So for some of them, at a certain cost, you may have the opportunity to simply list online. Customers can see you, and they contact you in an offline sort of process. Others will offer like a cart service where your customer could go, they can see your product, they can add it to a cart and place an order. Another level, you may be able to collect the payment from the customer at that point in time. And at the third level is that it can integrate with some sort of delivery system where the customer can even track the status of an order through your website. So these products or these e-commerce platforms, they offer these different tiers of convenience, as it were, to your customers, but it comes at a different price. Of course, in the context of the Trinidad and Tobago in particular, some of the functionalities may not be as easily accessible as if you were, say, a US-based business. Because if you're based in the US, it's very easy to set up a site, set up a payment sort of interaction with a payment provider, as well as the delivery companies, because their market is huge and it is very mature. So a lot of support services and an ecosystem for e-commerce is thriving over there. When it comes to applying some of these platforms to the local context, though, you may find that in some cases, you may need to actually get a developer to assist you in making the necessary integrations to give you that sort of seamless experience. And based on my experience, yeah, Shivani?
Nishan, yeah. You know, just something that just triggered in my mind. So for example, I require an e-commerce website. I will converse with the developer, and the developer will, you know, recommend, you know, what the different types of how to integrate into a payment system, into the payment systems. Whereas, you know, I don't have to do it for myself. So that's the takeaway from your conversation, that I don't have to think about, hey, I have to go to the different payment suppliers or, you know, payments. All I have to do is contact my web developer, and my web developer will, you know, recommend the different solutions to me and how persons could pay and integrate it.
Yes, that is correct, Shivani.
Right. E-commerce platforms that you mentioned a lot have different types of platforms that you could use. Mention that instead of having to use one of these platforms, you may want to design for yourself, but that is really for big organizations, you know, very, very large organizations. So if you are a small business starting up, of course, you may not want to go in that direction. You may want to go in the previous point that you made.
Yes, correct. And the fees are relatively low. So it gives you an opportunity to basically test your business model to determine whether e-commerce is something you need and how viable it is before you make a bigger investment into something more customized. And our market locally is growing. And even like our payment providers, like WePay, they offer a certain online collection of fees. They have been creating different apps and plugins that allow you to integrate with these platforms. So it is really a good step in the right direction to use these types of platforms for the local context.
Okay. Thank you, Nishan. So main points, as you mentioned, understanding, of course, what is your business? It comes back to knowing what is your business model, right? Are you a small business? Are you a large business? Am I going to simply integrate with an online platform that is already in existence, or do I have to design one? So this is the importance of the developer and this particular process that will guide us to know, you know, recommendations, what we can do, and how we can integrate some of the payment systems with our website. in order to stay in business, because we need people to pay, right? That's the purpose of e-commerce. You need to pay. So very important. Just to mention again with the payment options. What are some of the different types of payment options then, Bernadette, with the B2B model? How does that operate in a business-to-business model? Payment options.
Business-to-business models, similar to the business-to-consumer. Your business-to-consumer, you have your PayPal, but more often than not, when we have B2B, we need a intermediary, which is a gateway. And that intermediary or that gateway is the bank or the institution that would connect your local banks to the portal or the foreign bank that is initiating or finalizing that transaction. So what I mean by that is, if again, we go back to your lovely coffee example, Burns Beans, yes, the supermarket is ready, has purchased my stuff and they're ready to pay me. My local bank is in Trinidad, and let's say it's a supermarket somewhere abroad. What happens? They pay through that gateway, and the gateway options are different. You can have your own gateway, or that third party will give you like a portal, just like DHL, and their gateway with a secured login and everything, just for your business or your customers. They log in, they create the payment, and after they take a nominal fixed fee, that is then transferred to your local bank account. Now, the only difference is your local bank account or the other bank account, depending on the number of transactions, may also take a fee for that service. That's the main difference.
And what about in business to consumer then? A business to consumer, how does online payments, how would it operate in that area with business to consumer?
It's a similar sort of situation. You go, you swipe your credit card. I'm the consumer. I'm going to buy this cup of coffee from whatever supermarket or a quick shop, for example. I swipe my credit card. The institution, the place or point of sale that I am swiping my credit card, they pay a fee for that, to have that machine available there. And they swipe the credit card, or these days we tap the credit card, which I think is really quite exciting. I don't have to, especially with COVID, I just tap it. And the transaction goes through, depending on when they clear their transactions on the device. If it's a bank issued device, the payment is then made to the bank. There are other now newer methods that come up where they're actually apps, and they're apps on phones, and they're little add-ins that you can put on your phones. Almost some of the older ones are little, gosh, I need to use my hands to but it's a little like a swipe thing that you add on to the top of your phone. Some of them have them. Otherwise, they don't. You have an actual app, and in that app, you can actually do the transaction. So even payment methodologies are changing. However, the difference being that with the bank, there's a fee upfront, a rental charge for the device, etc. People are more, feel a little bit secure that, hey, this is something issued from the bank, so it's safer, rather than these other third-party applications, which you can get on your own and pay a different fee to a non-financial institution.
And to help support Bernadette's point a little bit, basically the way she used that traditional model where you go in and you swipe your card on a machine, a bank issued machine. Nowadays, these payment gateways, you have plugins that you put into your website that does the exact same thing. So when you enter your credit card information onto the website, it functions in the same manner as if you were swiping your card, in a physical store, right? So that's the way it sort of translates and transcends into the digital space.
This is a question that is coming from the audience. Let me just put it out. How does an e-commerce solution and the local Caribbean bank system work? I know we may have mentioned a couple points, but probably, to reinforce it, how does the e-commerce solution and the local Caribbean bank system work?
Okay, I guess I can take that. So your local bank, now if you put up a platform, when you put up your platform, you have different pay options. As Nishan would have mentioned, in a business to consumer, you have the option of PayPal, but of course, PayPal, you have to create an account you need to use in most cases a credit card. You need to put set up the account and have a value if you want to purchase, or if you're receiving payments, configure it such that you can receive payments, and then from that, once you have that payment in your PayPal account, you can then use to repurchase otherwise. If you have it in a local account, the local account, you need to have a gateway. And this is what we were talking about, which is a third party. A very common one used in Trinidad is called First Atlantic. And the First Atlantic gateway, they liaise with the different banks and they offer different options. So it really depends on what you're looking for.
Thank you, Bernadette. Another question, and probably Nishan could take this one. How does Shopify work? How does Shopify work? This is another question that's coming from the audience. How does Shopify work?
Okay, well, Shopify is one of those, as we would call it, out-of-the-box sort of solution, where you basically go onto their platform and you purchase an account for them. And after you purchase it, you're able to log into a portal that they will give you access to. And you could actually design web pages in terms of adding pictures, adding different types of text. You can create product catalogs. You can create forms. You can create contact us sort of information and pages. And they will host it for you. And you can even link it to your own domain, website domain, customized website domains. And from there, your customers can easily go onto the website and do whatever business that you would have set it up to do. For example, if you were selling physical goods, or you're selling services, you would go on Shopify, you would upload, let's say, an image, you'd put in some information about what is the pricing, whether there are any variants. The same thing you may be accustomed with on a standard platform. Shopify gives you the ability to do all of that without the need to actually program or have programming knowledge, because it allows you to do what we call like drag and drop and build websites without the need for programming language and to have a developer. So that's the beauty of these type of solutions, is catered to average person who can't code or program, but still wants to build a website and engage in e-commerce. And the price is pretty good as well.
And one thing you also had mentioned, Nishan, in your conversation when we were speaking about the different e-commerce platforms, you mentioned that, you could start small and then, you can improve it. So Shopify can definitely assist us in that. If we choose this type of platform, then we can say, okay, then we could upgrade and we could probably change the design, etc. So we have very economical platforms that we can start businesses, small businesses using. I also like how you said you don't need to code. You don't need to code. You have platforms that could assist you to do these things. You don't need to code. So again, things are changing. The technology is changing. Anyone can, get some advice, and we can go and do it for ourselves, and and improve and see how we can now come into an online environment, into the e-commerce platforms. So that's excellent.
True. And if I may add as well, people also have the option to consider joining a marketplace as well. If you don't actually want to go to Shopify and create a subscription and create a site, you can a marketplace and benefit from shared marketing across all of the different products and services. You may actually be on a marketplace where there are complementary sort of products. So your product will come up as a recommended item for another person's product. So in that way, you kind of leverage and benefit from economies of scale, being at a wider audience. I mean, there are a bit of limitations, but for the cost, again, you balance your costs versus what are the benefits against your wider kind of business objectives in choosing what sort of approach you might
So a main point there, you mentioned, yes, if you have a business, you can go and directly and set up your own online storefront if you want to use Shopify. But you also mentioned, I don't have to do that. I may say, okay, let me go into an online marketplace, and the online marketplace may very well, that is their responsibility then to market all the products. So I could capitalize on economies of scale. I could capitalize on probably some better marketing strategies that I don't have to do it for myself. So two main points that you mentioned. Yes, stemming from this conversation, you don't only have to look at it for yourself, meaning that you go and you design your own online shopping front now, your online store. You can go into an online marketplace, and that's where many different businesses can come into an online marketplace.
Additionally, if I could add further, there are different and newer business models that has been created because of this sort of convenience. For example, fulfillment services, which is what we are basically describing, and it's something that's practiced on Amazon, where you would produce a product, but you would give it to a fulfillment or a warehouse agency. They will hold on to your stock. They will sell the stock from their website. They will fulfill it to the customer, take care of all the delivery needs, handle your after-sales service. Of course, it will come at a fee, but again, you're transferring or sort of outsourcing certain services from you, allowing you to focus on, say, your production and outsourcing the other activities. Or even the popular now is something called drop shipping, where you actually don't hold any stock. You just manage your website. A customer places an order, you send the order to the supplier, and the supplier takes care of getting it delivered to the customer. And it comes at a very, very low cost. But of course, low cost and easy access means there's a lot of competition involved in this sort of business model. So you can become very good at it, but also lose very quickly because it's not as easily protected as it would. So different models come with different advantages and disadvantages.
Very true, very true. Thank you, Nishan. We have another question. Can we hear some more about local logistics, art to reality, to reliability, timeliness, refund, and return policies? So can we hear some more about local logistics, art to reliability, timeliness, refund, and return policies?
Okay. It depends on.
Okay, you go ahead. I'll come in after.
Yeah. So it depends on when you're okay. I think the DHL example is international, but they're also local as well. But I don't know if the question is coming from the point of right now, particularly with the pandemic, what happens is we're moving to contactless, and not only e-commerce, you have a lot of calls or pickups and deliveries, and that delivery service are sometimes smaller delivery services in a different area. So for example, for different food, you have Dropbox, not Dropbox, sorry, my bad.
Food drop.
Yes, food drop.
Food drop.
Because to deliver, and how does that work? And again, these are applications or services that are born out of a need that we're currently in. So therefore, whilst we're speaking about it, the thing is we are still, as mentioned before by the previous panelists, in a learning curve. So things have now started. People will have issues. So regarding that sort of reliability, we've only been in this pandemic for since March, so about 6-7 months. So we are still learning in some of the local delivery services, if that's what we're referring to by this particular question. But on the other side, we also have the international side with the DHL and the FedEx.
Thank you, Bernadette. I see this is a very interesting question, Nishan, definitely for you. Examples of online marketplaces. And the other question, does online marketplace manage drop shipping for you?
Okay, well, in terms of online marketplaces, well, you have the international context and you have the local context. In terms of the local context, I think we may be pretty much familiar with the Amazons and the eBays. We have websites that specialize in, like, say, cosmetics and clothes. So there's a website called Bata TT. So you go onto that website and they focus exclusively on apparel, cosmetics, and you order online and they deliver to you. Now, the nice thing about the site as well is that you can become a seller, and that's how you know it's kind of like a marketplace as well. You can register to become a seller. You can list your items there and take care of, and depending on the arrangement you have with the provider, you either would do your delivery for yourself or from their warehouse, they would dispatch goods. right? And a similar example is also ClickSmart. Trini Trolley is a slightly different version of that, where you can order stuff online internationally and they will bring it for you. Food Drop is another example of a local marketplace specializing in. You could browse the menus of various restaurants locally. You could place the order online and they will arrange for the delivery for you as well. In terms of also courier services, but if you're interested in the local logistics, Post, they kind of offer standard business rates for certain types of products under a certain size and dimension. And there are a couple other, as Bernard was saying, there's a need that is being created now. And there's something called Island Dropper. This is one of my clients, they use Island Dropper, where they would come and pick up a package for you at a standard rate and deliver it to you anywhere in Trinidad. So there is a proliferation and a fairly sort of development taking place in terms of these support services that are going to support your e-commerce strategy. And in terms of even the customer, you would the question before that would have come in about refunds and policies, whatever would generally govern a current sort of manual transaction that takes place in person, those policies and would govern the online sort of realm. But we do know, and I do know, that there is a need for greater regulation when it comes to online transactions, especially to protect consumers. Because you would see one thing in an ad or Facebook post, then you go, you buy it, you pay for it, and when it comes to you, it could be a totally different thing. So there is a need to strengthen refunds policy and online selling and distance selling, that kind of thing, locally to protect consumers. Shiva, you could just remind me the second question because I feel like I only answered the first part.
No, does online marketplaces manage drop shipping for you? Drop shipping.
Well, it depends on the particular marketplace arrangement. It varies depending on the business model,
Okay.
Particular online marketplace. So it's kind of like a case by case basis. But the answer would be yes, there are online marketplaces that would offer that facility.
Thank you, Nishan. So you started the conversation and probably we could continue with it. Is it legal to conduct e-commerce in Trinidad? So is it legal to conduct e-commerce in Trinidad and Tobago? And if so, what type of regulation exists to support e-commerce?
Okay, well, it is legal because we've been doing it for many, many years now.
Right.
If you want to be specific, electronic transactions are governed by two pieces of legislation locally, the Electronic Transactions Act, as well as the Data Protection Act. These basically give credence to online transactions. Now, there is some need for the updating of these pieces of legislation because they are fairly outdated. A lot of countries internationally now have moved to certain standards when it comes to, say, data protection and privacy online. And our sort of regulatory framework needs to come up to that standard now, because a practical challenge for not having that is that when you want to trade internationally and you want to sell your products internationally, you may be collecting data from persons abroad, credit card information, highly unlikely, but personal data. And these customers want to be assured that when the data comes into your space, it is adequately protected and it is kept safe. So from a legal and regulatory aspect, it is legal, it is recognized, but there is need for some modernization and updating of these particular regulations. And I can also advise that the Ministry of Trade, they are in the process of strengthening their consumer protection legislation. And a part of that project actually addresses online and distance selling. And it is going to basically specify certain standards as an e-commerce, as a seller or as a buyer. There are certain standards that you have to maintain and do when conducting business online. So that is a piece of legislation that I've had the opportunity to work with, that is on the way soon.
Coming soon.
Very, very soon.
Thank you. So, Shiv, you mentioned the marketing strategy. And I want to converse a little bit about that. As an e-commerce, an e-commerce business that we have, what are some of the major considerations that we have to consider when we are crafting our marketing strategy for our e-commerce sites? I mean, this is a conversation we could probably take about 3 hours for, but
Yeah, this is
probably sum it up in
vast.
2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll
We'll
try to be
two.
brief.
Don't worry, we'll do a part 2.
No problem. So essentially, before you even get to the marketing side of it, right, you need to understand as a business, what is your unique selling proposition, right? What differentiates you
USP,
from,
yeah.
yes, from all of the other players in your space, in your industry, that sort of thing. You need to define that clearly, understand who your target market is, your audience, what it is they like, where they reside. When you understand what platforms they reside on, then you can start marketing to them, because at that point you have the data you need to craft the proper strategy, right? In your marketing strategy, you need to demonstrate the convenience that is provided by your product. You don't just sell the products that you sell. Instead, you demonstrate to your customers, you market to your customers how much easier it is for them to go and use your system to consume your products. So
You're
let's
selling an
say,
experience, Shivanan. You're
yeah,
selling an experience.
you're selling convenience and an experience. That is correct. Yeah. So once you understand your customers, you understand the niche that they reside within, you can then send out this marketing data where you're demonstrating the value that your system brings. You can then send that out to them wherever they reside. If you know that, let's say, for example, you're targeting the older population in Trinidad, who, they're not that tech savvy, they don't reside so much in the digital space, but they still would have to use e-commerce when the need arises. You may want to consider using traditional media to market to these folks. Whereas if you're trying to target a younger audience, you may find that they reside more on Instagram and TikTok these days than on Facebook and other forms of media. So you need to target your audience where they reside, right? Leveraging social media is also key here, right? Because social media gives you very easy advertising, very low cost advertising, and it helps you reach exactly who you need to reach because of the way these platforms, does specific targeting to the audiences, right? Another factor to consider here is the SEO side of things. You need to ensure that your search engine optimization is on point. If you miss things in configuring this for your platform, you can end up being at the bottom of the Google search, or even hidden away where no one can find you when they're searching for similar products and services that you offer. By having a properly crafted SEO strategy, you ensure that when someone searches for a product or service that you offer, you're at the top of that list, or you're very close to the top of that list, right? That is key. Another key part of your marketing strategy is that you should leverage influencers in the social media space. Influencers give you probably the cheapest form of advertising you can ever get, because most times you don't have to pay influencers directly. What you can do is you can have an influencer speak about your platform, you give them a discount code that they can share with their followers, and then their followers can then use that discount code. What happens when a discount code is used for a particular influencer, that influencer gets a commission on the sale. So now you are never having to actually pay those influencers. And then the more customers you get, the more the influencer gets paid, the influencer is motivated, you generate revenue, everyone's happy. So that's
Yes,
something that
definitely.
everyone should take advantage of when they're moving into the e-commerce space. Another key thing, because of the experience you're trying to promote, your website design is crucial. If your website does not appeal to your target audience, then it's very rare that you're going to be successful. Sure, you may be selling products that they absolutely need, but in the event that you're selling products with elastic demand, so to speak, it makes it a bit harder if you have a terrible website design, right? You need to ensure that the perception that your customer has of your platform is one of a high quality product, a high quality system. Once you can drive that point home, your marketing strategy will deliver exactly what you need.
Thank you, Shiv. Thank you for this. Another question that came: setting up an e-commerce solution for local and international require the same setup, or they have different setup, or do they have different setup? That's a question that came in. So is it the same?
So
or
technically, you can set up most of the systems in the same manner, both for local and international use. Where it differs would be things such as your payment gateways and the regulations you need to follow, right? There are certain bits of legislation that protect customers' data in certain ways. The GDPR policy is one of the more popular ones recently, right? That protects customer data and it governs what you can and can't do with that data. So the way you store your data, the way it is handled when you are building your platform must be treated differently based on the region you are in. And it must be considered when you are looking to go into different regions.
okay. Another interesting question that came here: what impact does the country's foreign exchange limits have on e-commerce operators, particularly for foreign purchases? What impact does the country's foreign exchange limits have on e-commerce operators, particularly for foreign purchases?
Bernadette, you want to take that, or you want me just touch on it briefly?
You can start and I can.
Sure. So as everyone is quite familiar with, we're in a forex shortage, and as this shortage impacts most of the standard residents of the country, this shortage affects businesses also. So unfortunately, you're subject to most of the same limitations that almost every entity within the country is faced with.
And what Shiv is also saying, I mean, the options that are available to get foreign exchange, most popular is if you have credit cards, but even that facility sometimes is quite limited, because traditionally, and I'm keep bringing back culture into this though, is as they were saying earlier, when you have older people who are more accustomed to this face-to-face and traditional sale, face-to-face, I give you cash or something, they're not accustomed to cards. So a lot of people as well don't have a credit card facility. And even those who had possibly the option of a credit card facility may have turned it down because it's considered, they would have considered it a little bit insecure, unsafe. And all of that is our culture within the Caribbean that contributes to the perception of what the credit card does and using a credit card for payments.
This is a question that is coming from the audience again. And it was a question that we were speaking about in a previous conversation, right? And we were wondering if to bring it up here, but look, it came up. Do you have a PayPal or Stripe related mechanism for the Caribbean? Do you have a PayPal or Stripe related mechanism for the Caribbean?
I think if I were to guess, so I think what the person is asking about Stripe and PayPal, that's a mechanism. So for people who are not aware of what Stripe and PayPal does, is that they would allow that facilitation of collection of money, but it doesn't link to a bank. It links, well, Stripe does actually. Stripe links to US bank accounts. But PayPal will link to your savings, quote unquote, in PayPal, and you use that money to purchase on other sites that have PayPal accounts. The closest possible thing I can think of here is possibly the options these guys have mentioned, which is more the WePay things of way of things that is closest to local right now.
Right. Thank you, Bernadette. So we're having such a great conversation. There are so many questions coming in. But what are some of the major considerations? What would you say when aiming to, well, we discussed this, when aiming to craft a marketing strategy? How do you go about evaluating the the success of your e-commerce platform? So many of us would have an e-commerce platform. We plan it, we said we want it, we have developed it. How do we know that it is successful? How do we evaluate it? How do we evaluate the success of an e-commerce platform?
Yeah, so there's a number of mechanisms you can use to really evaluate the success here, right? And this ties back to the start of your entire endeavor. When you're crafting this e-commerce strategy, when you're crafting this plan to move into the e-commerce space, you need to consider your target audience. You need to consider the business space, the niche that you're operating within. You now have a set of metrics that can guide you, right? What you can do is, with these e-commerce platforms, you have analytic and reporting data coming out of it, right? You can understand, the gender of your audiences, your consumers. You can understand the demographic data for them, what part of the country they reside in, basically the buying patterns that they have. You can look at this holistic set of data and from there extrapolate patterns that arise, right? You can tell that 25 to 35-year-olds tend to buy a lot of soft drink. You can tell that the older folks tend to buy a lot of aspirin and painkillers. Those are just broad generalizations, but essentially, once
Those
you
are
can
broad
draw,
generalizations. Broad,
yes, I apologize if I offended anyone. But essentially, from the data that you get from your analytics platforms, you can then understand these patterns, and now how to compare this with what you expected to get at the start. You're expecting to have a reach of 10% of the teens or the young adults in the country, or you're expected to have a reach to 20% of the older folk, and the age range that you're looking for when you started out in this endeavor. Now you can look at your analytics and your reporting data to understand exactly how successful your platform has been. Revenue isn't the only indicator of success, right? Because you can be making a lot of money, but still not be reaching the right audiences. And I mean, if that's happening, then the only way to go there is up, right? You're in a really good place, and you can just improve tremendously if you pay attention to the analytics and understand the buying patterns of your consumers. Another mechanism you can use is you can do things like a net promoter score system, whereby you ask your consumers, how likely they are to recommend your product or service to a colleague or a family member. And that gives you a sort of holistic picture as to the overall mindset of your platform, right? So these are mechanisms that you can consider, when you really want to understand how successful your platform is. Another thing you can do, and probably this is the most meaningful aspect, because while the analytic data leads you to conclusions and you have to draw assumptions from it, listening directly to your customer feedback is the most important bit, right? Customers tend to go on social media, they would leave feedback about your products, your services, your platforms. A lot of the sponsored posts that you put up tend to see a lot of interaction from your audiences. So you can understand where their head is at, what they're interested in, whether they're always asking about the prices of products that you sell, similar things like that. So these are all factors that you can use to really gauge the success of your platform.
So definitely, Shiv, you mentioned in terms of, yeah, Bernadette, yes?
Minor thing, it's just that one of the other things available on those are the customer reviews. So you have on all of your e-commerce platforms, you have customer reviews, would you like to leave us a review? And those, at least for me, because that's one of the things I would look at, is what's somebody else's experience to see if I might have the same experience. I may filter manually somebody who has a 2-star, and I would look at 3 stars and 4 stars. So, and that's one of the simplest things to start with.
You made a very good point here too, Bernadette, in terms of customer reviews. And it ties back to our whole conversation when we said in terms of web design, you have to know how to design the platform. What do you want? So you're designing it with that in mind to actually get customer reviews to know if your e-commerce is well, you had a good platform, you had a good success. So it's a very, very interesting point, a very pertinent point in terms of how to evaluate your e-commerce, because this whole conversation started by saying you have an e-commerce site, you can do it, you can have a platform, you contact your web developer, etc., and we design something for you, whether it's an online marketplace or are we using Shopify, what are we using. However, at the end of the day, you want to know how successful. You have to evaluate. You could have a plan, as what we said in PM, in project management all the time. You have a plan, but you have to evaluate the plan. You have to evaluate the plan. What is the biggest challenge? So Bernadette, I feel you may want to take this one. What is the biggest challenge facing the Caribbean regarding e-commerce at the moment with COVID-19? What's the biggest challenge?
One of the biggest things, and I've had this conversation several times. I mean, the world we live in right now is significantly different from 7 months ago. What we're seeing is an increase in e-commerce, particularly in the Caribbean and I would say Central America as well. But the reason for that is our pandemic. Fortunately or unfortunately, COVID-19 has driven, or is the catalyst for us to move to our e-commerce platform. Because what's happening now is we need to continue our businesses. We need to generate income, but it's rather difficult in the traditional ways. So we have to look at new and innovative ways. And one of the ways is an e-commerce platform. Having said that though, the e-commerce platforms that we have cannot as well be what early e-commerce platforms are, because one of the things that's happening with COVID is that the transmission of the disease. So you're hearing a lot of key buzzwords, particularly contactless. So what now happens is to the person who asked a question earlier about delivery and local delivery, that space, that whole supply chain locally in any local market is opening up. You never had services, free delivery for goods and services. You never had the ability to place an order online and pick up in a supermarket or even other stores that you might frequent. You're accustomed, I have to physically get in my car and go to the location, get what I need and come back. Now there's that convenience, and it all ties back to what other panelists were saying about convenience. E-commerce was selling that convenience. So one thing is, yes, I'm selling something convenient. I'm selling food, particularly. You're seeing all these food places coming online, even local catering. But how am I getting that food? People don't want to come out to get it. Maybe I'll take the chance, curbside pickup. But no, now I have other new companies, like we said, Food Drop. I'll pick it up for you. I'll drop it home for you. We even have simple things such as just to purchase specific products. On a Sunday morning, I get eggs delivered at a specific time. I buy eggs and it's delivered. That convenience, for the same price that I would have gone in my car, gone to the closest place, picked up the crate and come back. So people are innovating. They're offering more in order to sustain and maintain their business. And it's been catalyzed by COVID. So I think we're heading in the right direction. We're not quite there yet. There's a lot of work to be done, as alluded to with the question about, again, the delivery and that customer service and refunds and the legislation, how that ties back in. Because again, it's all still fairly new. And a lot of these things take time to implement, time to govern, time to administer.
Thank you, Bernadette. So definitely, it all comes back to understanding how do we really understand e-commerce? What do we have to do? We have to firstly understand our business. What is our business model? So you want to go online, you want to say, all right, yes, I'm hearing about e-commerce and I have to get online. But it comes back to having a total understanding of your business model, of your business processes. How many persons, Bernadette, Nisha, and we hear all the time, we say, okay, we want to move online. We want to go into the digital form, into this this workplace, this different type of workplace. But do we understand our processes? Do we really understand our processes? And this is where your whole delivery system, your refund policies, everything has to come. We have to understand it before we just go and launch an e-commerce site. E-commerce, we could set up an e-commerce very easily. We can come to you, Nishan, and we could set up an e-commerce very easily. You could set up one for us very easily. But is if we can work it. And this is where Shivanan, you spoke a lot about staff and understanding that is much more than a person developing a website. Do you have the staff to populate, to update? And something you mentioned a while back, Bernadette, when we were speaking about it. In brick and mortar shops, you have all these sales, right? So you have Christmas sale, you have Labor Day sale, you have all these different sales. That is what we also have to do with our e-commerce platforms too. We have to show sale all the time. So things are changing. We have to understand the platform that we have, that we are using for e-commerce. We have to know the business that we are in. And we have to know that how are we engaging the customers to market this e-commerce site. So it all comes down to probably 3 important words. Do you have an e-commerce strategy? What is your e-commerce strategy? And it ties into those 3 words, your e-commerce strategy, understanding your business strategy first, Nishan, as you said all the time. Do you know your business strategy? And then and only then we can have an e-commerce strategy. So I think this conversation, we will have to do a part 2 again with e-commerce, right? We will have to do. We have so much other things to speak about, and we'll definitely have a follow-up conversation with this. I wish to say thank you to all the presenters, Shivanan, Nishan, and Bernadette. With all the questions that were posed in here that we had to ask, I know we have to have a follow-up. And all the questions that we brought forward, it showed that we were engaging the audience. The audience was very, 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 very interested in asking some of these questions. The online marketplaces were a popular question that keep coming up. So again, everyone, thank you, all the viewers. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. We went a little over because we were having such a good time. So thanks again. And until next time, see you all. Thank you.